I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
Baculum is a bone found in the penis of certain mammals, including many primates. Didn't know I had. I guess I got one of those. Rodents, bats, carnivores, and some insectivores.
Definitely raccoons.
Well, they do all of that. So.
I think walrus have them too.
Oh, look, here's a whole list of them. Good grief.
I wonder if you could make a wingbone-esque call out of a vacuum.
You call it a wang bone.
Yes, we're doing it. We're doing it.
I hope you're recording.
All right, write this down.
Money right there.
That was good.
Like, Mac.
Lord.
So I got a raccoon, an otter, a badger, a coyote, a red fox, a mink, a beaver, and a short-tailed weasel on the back.
We may not need to publish that because
a wang bone.
You know, our guest over there is looking at us like,
What the hell did I?
what are these people saying?
all right, count us down.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, everybody.
Here we go.
We've got a special guest here today. And
Yeah.
he's 20 hours it took him to get here
A long way on a plane.
on a plane. West Point, Mississippi. We're just so glad to have our guest here today. And we've got we're going to talk about something that we all are fascinated by, interested in, have made it part of our lives.
What? Food plots? I mean,
That's it, yeah. It's a big part of our lives.
deadly like
It
food
is.
plots. Yeah, we've got some test plots going out there. Got some Endurance Radish going out there right now.
Yeah.
Spring protein peas.
So let me introduce him so he can jump right in here with us. We've got Andrew Dumbleton.
That is
And he's all the way
that's an official sounding name.
Yeah,
You know, it is.
it sounds like something off of Lord of the Rings or
Yeah,
something,
it does.
actually.
Yeah.
So he's from New Zealand. He helped when we first started Biologic. He was one of the first guys that from down in that part of the world that helped us, understand some of the performance. Of
Yeah,
some of the
Matt was
plants.
telling me something about catching some deer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I caught some deer. I caught some white-tailed deer in New Zealand. 8 of them. There's not many there, but they are there.
Wow.
And that's how we did the first food plot tests
For Biologic.
for Biologic.
Literally caught him.
Caught them.
Yeah, we.
That's
you know,
pretty serious.
we've all.
I've caught one, but I mean, I don't know very many people that have.
No, not many. There's a whole. There's a
You ever
guy
caught one?
catching deer. I have. I
Yeah,
caught
you
a
caught
fawn one time.
We really need to get him a catching deer's hat.
Yeah, that's true. That would make a lot of sense.
He does.
In Bottomland. That'd be badass.
That deep baritone voice that everybody just heard, that's Austin Delaney.
Our other special guest.
Usually when you hear
He's ours,
Austin,
though.
you hear,
Yeah, he's always breaking up because his internet's so bad.
Yeah.
It's good to have you in
Sorry.
studio.
Yeah,
We
it's
can
good to
actually
be
listen to what you have to say.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
so we've got a bunch of questions for Andrew. We're gonna turn Mac loose on him. Andrew, we're just so excited to have you here. You've been working on you've been working around Biologic for 25 years, I think.
I have been.
No,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Ever since I started work.
Now, I
He's
didn't
been
understand.
working on Biologic longer
So when
than
he
you
was
have.
Well, I don't think so. But I'm not sure I understood what you just said.
Well, when I first started with PGG Wrightson, this was my first job to catch those 8 white-tailed deer. So I was young, naive, and keen. So they sent me down to this wildlife area, and I had to catch the deer, and I successfully did it. So,
Tell us about how you catch these deer.
well, they're quite spooky.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're quite hard to catch. So we basically we rented like a 5 acre paddock with a deer fence around it
Mhm.
that edged onto the forest, the national park of New Zealand, and I planted a whole lot of food plots in it with
A whole lot of Biologic.
A lot of brassica.
a lot of brassica, a lot of herbs, a lot of clovers. And then over time, we just got the deer used to coming and going. And I just woke up at 3 o'clock one morning and went out and shut the gate and
Close the slammer on them.
Closed the slammer, and next morning I went back and there's 8 of them running around there.
Wow. So is the whitetail native to New Zealand?
No, so it's introduced, and that's why the population is so small. So there's only 2 parts of New Zealand where they were introduced. One at Stewart Island, which is way at the south of the South Island, and in Queenstown at the head of Lake Wakatipu. So, small populations, but yeah, still living in the wild.
Nice.
There's a lot of introduced things in New Zealand.
Yeah. I thought I knew the answer to that. I just felt like I had to ask it.
They don't have snakes. They don't have possums. They don't have raccoons. They don't have ticks.
Good grief. I need to go over there.
Do they have mosquitoes there?
We do have mosquitoes.
Okay.
But that's about as bad as it gets.
They got really good fishing. They got really good hunting. They got turkeys.
Yeah, they do. He says they don't have as many as we think they do, though.
No, not many turkeys.
Well, we better not go over there quite yet.
So yesterday I was giving him some advice about, hey, if you walk out there to the little, our test plots that you've done, you've just
I feel
created.
bad. I mean, he's like the pro guy. Looking at him like,
You got to get over that, though. But I told him just be sure you don't sit down in the grass because you're going to get some chiggers or red bugs. And he was like, what's a chigger? And, I was kind of explaining all that to him. And they don't, he said in the bush in New Zealand, you can sit down anywhere and not have to worry about getting a bug.
And you better watch it around here.
Wow.
Just relax.
You should take some chiggers back with you.
No, you shouldn't.
I don't think I'd be that popular.
No.
No.
And if you ever get them, you'll never forget about them. That's for sure.
All right. Well, before we start asking a bunch of questions, let's take care of a little business here. The blood on the Biologic. It's turkey season is rapidly closed down. But anybody else? You seen anybody else on the board?
I'm not.
I'm kind of, my mind is completely on spring food plots and doves and everything else. So I hadn't really been paying attention.
So the marketing crew, I got a picture this morning that is down
fishing
near Venice, and they sent a picture, and everybody's holding up a big old tuna.
Mm-hmm.
And
so we're expecting
there's
some
a lot of blood
around
on the
here
boat
pretty quick.
Yeah, I don't know if those are yellowfin or blue. I don't know.
They're probably yellowfin.
Great big old tuna.
Maybe big eyes.
I don't know.
So are they down there with a Mexican golf crew
Yeah,
hanging
they're
out?
with the golf crew. That's for sure.
That's great.
I think they're working on some hook stuff with those guys. So
Okay.
That's what's going on.
Hopefully they bring us some tuna and stop at Sharko's and bring us a few shrimp too.
I'm
That'd be
texting them
nice.
right now to be sure we get some fresh tuna.
And then, if Rob brings some oysters,
oh man, we'll have a
It's
celebration.
gonna be
around
old.
yeah.
Believe.
there. Oh,
Well, LS Tractor sponsors our blood on the Biologic, and they'll probably be very disappointed this week because we don't have much to add.
well, the good thing is instead of turkey hunting, we've been using these LS tractors, so a whole lot, and they are super. I don't, Bobby,
Am I going to get back on it anytime
I
soon?
don't know. The thing's so handy around the house. Have I showed you the pictures of what I've done with this thing?
Some.
I think he's built a whole new house pad or something.
I think they're just moving dirt from one side of the house to the other side.
Yeah. Well, I will. I'm gonna quit bragging on it after this, but that little machine is unbelievably useful, and the backhoe attachment is stronger than you could ever expect from it. So, super quality, super well built, and as far as I know, it's a beginning tractor for you. But my young son is learning the fundamentals on it with a hydrostatic drive. It's got a lot of safety features. I'm not even worried about him. He'll go off and dig a hole somewhere, and I'm not worried about it because it's got the safety features it needs in it. He wears a seatbelt, the rollover protection device, and everything else. So
It is a safe tractor.
it is a very safe tractor.
Yeah.
Again, he's just turned 13. I'm not even worried about it. And I see the look on your face, Richie. I know you want it at your house. We're gonna.
Still put my name on the house.
Yeah.
I'll bring it to you, Rich.
Yeah, Richie needs it. Yeah.
Yeah, I need to take it to my house and then take it to my church and grade the driveway.
We
all
got a
that
lot
good
to
stuff.
do.
Yeah, I don't think you can grade the driveway with this one. Maybe if you did the bucket in
Sure.
reverse. But
Well, we do have a box blade we can put on the 50 horse, and you can grade with that.
sure
Boom.
could.
So
You
there you
could
go. Hey.
take off.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'll quit bragging on the LS tractor. And Richie, we're coming to Caledonia, buddy.
Did you
I'd probably go.
did Shannon get attacked by a rattlesnake recently?
Well, it wasn't attacked.
She was on a Zoom meeting and looks out the window and sees one.
Well, she was getting prepared for it. So my wife, who he's talking about is Shannon. She works for Mossy Oak too, and manages a lot of mass merchant retail business for us, along with Chris Paradise. So anyway, she a lot of the people she works with aren't in West Point, so she has a home office that she works out of, and we live in a pretty rural spot, I guess is the best way to put it. But no, she went out on the back patio to right before her Zoom meeting and looked down at a cross tie I had on the edge of the yard, and she said, a rattlesnake, as long as the cross tie, was looking over the cross tie at her. So,
Austin, how long would that be?
8 foot.
That's exactly right.
it's a big rattlesnake.
That is a giant rattlesnake.
So what would your wife have done?
She would have called me, no matter where I was, and it would have been my responsibility to come home and do something. But she does have a pistol, and she probably would have emptied her pistol on it.
Well, that's what my wife did. She went in and got the 9mm. I was like, you couldn't have got the shotgun? She was like, the gas tank, the propane tank was too close to it. I was like, well, we're not going to get into the semantics of it. So she takes her trusty 9mm and goes to battle with the snake and hits him in the head area as he was looking over the cross tie at her. Balls up and starts rattling after she shot him. And then she all of a sudden realized she's late for a Zoom call. So she runs back inside, gets on the Zoom call, gets to the Zoom call, goes back outside. Guess what?
He gone.
He gone. Yeah. Enter the LS tractor again. So when I get home, I go to look, and sure enough, there's a stump hole, and I'm pretty sure it's a rattlesnake den right there behind the house. And I use that handy dandy little excavator backhoe attachment on that thing to be sure it was completely dug up and destroyed. So,
Did you ever see him again?
no, never saw him again. He's a giant too, by the way. So shout out to Shannon for protecting the house while I'm not there.
Well, I might need to take Andy out there and let him look around.
You like snakes?
No,
No.
I hate snakes.
Oh, my goodness. Well, so I'm glad she's okay.
Yeah, she's good.
And we don't really, boy, there's a lot of opinion. Well, somebody's probably going to be like, I shouldn't be killing a rattlesnake. But around your house, that's a whole
It's around my
different
house.
story.
I have young kids. We spend a lot of time. Look, it's known for snakes. There are lots of king snakes, lots of rat snakes. I've got several videos of snakes I could show you that we did not kill. So, but yeah, rattlesnake, just I can't take the chance out there.
Yeah, especially with dogs and all. And as a PSA,
Public service announcement.
yes, there's now a shot that you can get a dog
Yep.
that'll. I'm not going to say it will save his, prevent him.
It inoculates him or something.
But it will buy you some time to get to the vet.
Ironically, I heard that commercial right before she called me.
Is that right?
Yep.
And the shots are only about $20.
Mm.
I'm thinking about.
You ought to
getting
get one.
I think
thinking about getting one.
Austin gets one once a year just in case.
Well, that with his ivermectin, he's
Here
pretty
it
good.
goes.
Speaking of that, my dog's already been bit twice this year by rattlesnakes.
You kill them in your yard?
In the yard, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would be divorced if not.
Yeah.
Well, don't do that. All right, so LS Tractors, thank you. I hope one day I'm in bad need, but we'll deal with that later.
We're coming your way, Bobby.
So let's keep this moving.
Right after
Matt,
Richie.
you look like you're on Facebook. Everything good over
He's probably
there?
working on those tractor supply orders, We are shipping stuff out right now, so get ready. It's coming.
Yeah, if you're
Somebody's calling.
what was that?
Mm.
Somebody's faxing.
He must be
So-
faxing. Is that tractor supply sending more orders in? I don't like it.
So if you're if you're interested in food plots, in the next few weeks, you'll be able to start going to Tractor Supply, and they're building their deer event. They're going to have
Yeah.
a lot of biologic in there.
Yeah. Deer plot will be in there. Obviously, we
And
got
a
a
new
new
one.
product called
Yeah.
Quick Sow Deer Plot. A little bit easier to install, but Austin did a good job formulating some up for some
It's going to be
brothers.
good.
Yeah.
It's going to be great. So, Dudley, we're going to use his method of
Spray and pray.
spray it.
What's it called?
Throwing mode.
Throwing mode,
No, I thought it was
whatever you
spray
want to
and
call
pray.
it.
So
Poor
we're
man's no-till.
Yeah. Waiting on our weeds to get a little higher out here. Then we're going to do a throw and mow plot with Quick Sow. So hopefully I'll see that on social pretty soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Check that spray and pray. We might could trademark that. That might be a good.
That sounds like you shooting at a steak.
It's probably more realistic, to be honest.
All right, so let's get serious here. We've got Andrew, and I'm gonna call you Andy because we've known each other so long. Don't want to be formal, but the first question I want to ask you is: in New Zealand, when you flush a toilet, does the water go the same direction that it goes here in the North America?
Apparently, it goes a different way, different direction. But I can't actually say I've actually compared the two. But I do believe it is different.
Well, while you're here, you should check it out. But I just went and checked ours, and ours don't circle.
It just goes straight.
See, it just goes straight down.
Straight down.
It's a Kohler. It's much higher quality.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that means you're on the equator if it goes straight down.
Is that?
If I remember rightly, I think Southern Hemisphere is clockwise, and Northern Hemisphere is anti-clockwise.
Oh, if we had a fact checker that could check this for us.
Oh, Google it.
So I expect
there it is.
Mac, there goes Mac.
We're dialing up.
He's
We
going to
gotta
have
get
us
on the
something
internet.
here. We may not get tractor invoice, but we're going to figure out which way the water's going. So, look, tell us about your experience. How did you get to be a plant breeder? That's your title down there. You're a senior plant breeder. That sounds like that sounds like you have a lot of knowledge about how plants work. And yeah, look, I don't think many people have that knowledge. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I kind of fell into it, really. So I come from a farm way at the bottom of the South Island, about 6 hours away from Christchurch, moved up from a university, enjoyed the plant sciences, naturally did all right in them, and then kind of fell into a job with PGG. And I guess that's just where the career started. I saw I could make a difference quite quickly by selecting plants and then self-pollinating them and then seeing the offspring. And once you got going, it was almost a bit addictive, really. And 25 years later, I'm still doing it, and still enjoying it. So, yeah, it's been a ride and a fun ride.
So, in this 25-year that you've been with the company, so Biologic, when we started, we bought our seeds exclusively from Wrightson Nutrition there, and which is like a 150-year-old company at the time. It's 25 years ago, so it's 175 probably now. But we came to understand that New Zealand is the world's leader in forage research, and that's a fascinating thing because y'all aren't that. That's what y'all are known for. Tourism. People go to New Zealand, and it's a beautiful island. You can snow ski and you can play on the beach and everything in between. But you guys really are the world's leader in forage research.
Yeah, I guess that's probably due to the relationship with the grazing animals. So, we introduce those grazing animals into all our breeding programs. And when you match the two together and select the good stuff at the end, yeah, it does work. And we've created a business by doing that.
Well, we've dealt with you guys for a long time, and you guys have brought continuously every few years bring some new cultivar to us. But it has to go through your breeding program, and you've selected this. Right now, we're looking at this new radish.
Yeah, and what I hear that it was y'all started working on this radish in 1947.
Well, that's where the breeding program started back in South Africa. So it started after World War II, when South African prisoners of war in Japan saw these bulbs in Japan and thought they'd take some seeds back to South Africa with them to use for grazing animals. And that's where the program started. And this guy called Dave Goodall started breeding those seeds. And he spent all this time breeding the bulb side of things, and he got that spot on. But where he struggled is with the leaf side of things.
Forage.
Yeah, and the leaf was it had spikes on it, and it wasn't palatable, and he couldn't fix that. But one of my colleagues had grazing radishes, which weren't very good at the bulbs, but had great leaf. And the two of them got together and combined the two breeding programs, cross-pollinated the various plants, and out came Endurance Radish. So Dave did the bottom, which is the bulb, and Ellen did the top, which is the leaf. And over, probably a couple of decades, Endurance Radish was born.
And we just now getting it.
You are. So it's taken a long time.
Yeah, it has.
Well,
I tell
wanna
you what,
say
the plot. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the first test seeds that he sent us of Endurance was 8 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, would be. Would be.
Yeah.
Yep.
Was that back in the deer step days when we?
Maybe, or just after, because I remember the very first year that we had just literally a pound was, of course, a terrible growing year.
Yeah.
But the one thing we noticed was they grew better than anything else despite the drought conditions. And within 6 or 8 weeks, that one little quarter-acre plot we got was scalped.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, well, not a great test because there's nothing else to eat this year really either.
Right.
So, but since the last 8 or 10 years that he's been sending what they could to let us keep on using it, it's never failed as being the most drought tolerant brassica I think that we can use, which is a good testament because if
It's gonna be huge. For
you
us
know
in
if
the
that
South.
yeah, absolutely, and you know if it was to die from a drought, then nothing else would have lived.
Right.
So anyway, I say all that to say it takes a long time for y'all to get from an idea to actual production.
Yeah, it does. And really, the time thing is you can only make one selection per year. So you get one shot every year at selecting something and taking seed from it. So, yeah, time is the biggest cost.
So, what do you take the radish with the nice bulb and the radish with the nice forage and like put them in a box together or something? Or I mean, how does this really work out? Play some good music.
So, how do you mate plants?
Yeah.
So I do it with tweezers.
Oh, nice.
And I strip back the flowers and expose the anther and take pollen from another plant.
Drop it in there.
And drop it in there and then seal it all up in a little tissue paper bag so it's all sterile and pure. And then from that cross, I'll probably take on the maybe 25 seeds. So maybe only 2 or 3 pods. And then those will go into single plant progenies after that.
Wow.
So it's simple.
It's very
as that.
delicate work, it sounds like.
Yeah, it is. It is. And you've got to have really good eyes and been able to
Mm-hmm.
see really small things and not rip things out that you're not supposed to.
Yeah, it's no different than, how we breed corn or pine trees or, really any kind of plant for that matter.
Yeah.
But it's not an easy process, and you've got to keep other pollen from getting in. So that's why they put the bags over it. We've played with it with oak trees, but, you only get one acorn.
Yeah.
So it's difficult.
Yeah, that'd be tough.
Wow. Well, I tell you, when you think about what all we have access to and how long it's taken to get it to that point, it kind of puts things in perspective about why some seeds are a little more expensive than others. But I want to talk to you about brassicas. We have just fallen in love with them, and the deer absolutely love them. Sometimes if a property, Austin, help me explain this, but if there's not a real high deer density, they've got to learn to eat brassicas.
Yeah,
And
I think that's where you tend to see the most issue, if you want to call it that, with deer getting acclimated to the brassica crops is deer that have the option of being picky because they have other food sources, and there's a low enough deer density that they're not forced into eating the just next best green thing, which a lot of them do. Or when you get into super high deer density areas, it's really competition between each other. Who's going to get the high quality stuff and who's going to get the low quality stuff, which leads to a lot of things getting over browsed and browsed past the point of being able to come back even from our native stuff. So, there's a lot of scenarios and a lot of variables that go into whitetails consuming the brassicas, but they always learn to. Sometimes it might take them a year, sometimes it could be 2, depending on a lot of things. Sometimes they start eating it like it's in their DNA.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of scenarios, and I don't know that we've ever just been able to say, here's the reason they don't eat it the first year. because there's always like, well, it could be this, it could be that. But, you know, when they do figure it out, if it takes them 5 months or if it takes them, you know, 2 seasons of it, then
It's worth it.
It's
Yeah.
worth it, because then you're always like, well, I need additional acreage now because these deer are just pounding it, you know.
It's just so much tonnage of food, though.
That's what's impressive about it. The amount of forage that you can grow in an acre and how digestible it is. It's just like a scientist like Andy sat down and dreamed this up. What do we want it to do? And it performs that way.
Well, I think something Andy told me 15 plus years ago when we first met that really stuck about why not only do they have great growing conditions over there for this breeding programs and to do this, but the neat thing is on a place like New Zealand, if you don't realize it, but you're kind of limited in land mass.
Yeah, we are.
There's not just, you know, you can't just go out and find, you know, limitless plowable land and tillable
No, it's
land
an
'cause
island,
it's not
yeah.
there.
Mhm.
So what they do use grows a lot of tonnage per square foot, if
They
you
have
want to
to.
put it that way,
Yeah.
because you have to.
They
So
call them paddocks.
We call it paddocks.
Yeah. Those little bitty squares.
and they're just so precise about how they breed these and how they grow them in the paddocks and transitioning the
Move them off, move them on.
rotational
Yeah.
grazing
Yeah.
with all the different things they raise.
So one of the interesting things when we started Biologic, there was a couple of plants that Andy was just getting done, and Lanny, we were able to send. So they had a growing season in the southern hemisphere. They would have a growing season in the northern hemisphere, and we did that a couple of years back to back. And that was we were able to get 2 growing seasons in 1 calendar year. You see what I'm doing there,
I
Lanny?
see where you're going.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the beauty of being able to access, you know, another part of the world.
Yeah, so we call that speed breeding. So going twice as fast, doing 2 seasons in 1 year.
Let's talk just a little bit about explain brassicas and how they perform and what they were bred to do originally, and then how they found their way as a forage for whitetails.
Guess we all know brassicas as cauliflower and broccoli and Brussels sprouts. You know, the human food versions. Turnips, also, and the original brassica material, the winter types, the kale and the swede, came from Europe, and the summer types came from or kind of like Syria, Iran, Greece, just those hot areas. And over time, what we've done is we've developed these brassica materials into grazing crops that feed animals. And so depending on what you're wanting, so if it's really high yield, single graze winter types, you know, we've got swede and kale. And for summer types, which you want, you know, quick feed, you know, we've got, you know, your turnips, you've got your radish, you've got your forage rapes, and those work really well. So what we've done with the breeding program is really align what the grazing animals need to what the crop can grow. And I guess that's the real key.
When I think about, you know, you mentioned some of those countries, and you might think, well, that's nowhere near North America and my wife, but a lot of the clovers came from the Mediterranean. Is that right?
Correct. So I've got workmates who go on plant collection trips. So they will go to these countries and they will drive up and down roadsides and they'll select really good plants from the roadside or in fields, and we'll bring them back to New Zealand and then introduce them into the breeding program. So it's quite a fun job.
That sounds a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So you've got to be good at jumping fences.
I'm in.
So you have a driver.
Say, Lanning, do that one.
So
pro.
So there's always 2 of us. So there's the picker and the driver, and
The what?
what?
The what in the
the picker gets the sample. The driver keeps the car going.
picker, not pecker.
Picker, and the driver's in the car ready to make a quick getaway. So
Well, how do you make sure you're not bringing something back that's going to turn into an invasive species?
So we have to put these samples into a quarantine type facility, which is enclosed. And so we have to grow a generation of that in controlled conditions and then prove that there's no diseases or anything harmful to our environment. So it's all imported under a permit.
Are they going to have to do that when you go back to check for ticks and chiggers?
I hope not. I think I have to do that myself.
Okay.
Wow.
What is as far as when you start getting into the arena of taking plants out of the lab and introducing them into a field, how small are those very first steps?
Oh, they're really small. So you might only have, 50 plants. So you've got a population of 50 parents, and then you'll take those from the lab and put them out as what we call single plants, planted into a field. And that's when we start measuring the field performance from those 50 plants.
So when you first tested the seeds on the white-tailed deer, what did you see their preference was? Was it a different time of year that hit the clovers and the rape or radish or turnips, or what were some of your takeaways from that?
So for me, the takeaway was really obvious. In the springtime, they're really wanting protein. They've had a lean winter, so they hit a lot of the legumes and herbs early on in the spring, and then early summer into the fall and into the winter. That's when they really moved over to the brassica side of the thing. So there was a real species difference.
That's kind of why we like to have mixes of them. Brassicas in one spot, clover in another.
Look, I guess the key thing is, to have a utilization cage per test plot. So you've really got to know what the difference is between what they're eating and what could grow without deer. And it's just the difference between the two. That's what I spend a lot of time measuring is, what they're eating and when they're eating it and at what stage.
Palatability is important.
Palatability is everything. So, you can sometimes the most highest yielding species are the least preferred, and some of the most, lower yielding variety are the most preferred. So, you can't just look at it from a pure yield side of things. You've got to graze them and measure the grazing.
So as we're testing some of these plants, they're just planted, but there's a lot of weed competition coming on. Do you have a recommendation do you like to see those plants get to be, say, 21 or 24 days old before you spray over the top some kind of herbicide?
Yeah, so we usually, from 4 to 5 leaves, which is, about 4 to 5 weeks. So, that's when we'd put on what we call a post-emergent herbicide in order to knock out all those broadleaf weeds, but also the grass weeds too. So we usually take out both.
If you sprayed earlier than that, say you sprayed it 2 weeks, what are you risking?
Probably risking a bit of damage to the brassica is still quite tender, and some of those, some of that damage does really stop its growth. So we're just careful when we put on the first application of herbicide, and the plant's just more stronger at the 4-leaf stage.
Well, we got 2 leaves to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just
Mac,
go back.
no,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Mac, if you need to go, we know you got a bunch of busy stuff, and we'll catch you next time.
See you, Mac.
All right, Lanny.
Hey.
Come on. I know you got a question.
Talking about forage production and tonnage, and I just like, I know we've talked about the paddocks a little bit, but it's interesting. Me over the past few years, I went from wanting to plant a whole lot to really concentrating on kind of where my head is now is I think I can get as much forage and nutrition out of a 1/4 acre plot if I'm really, or I should probably say a quarter of the area that I've been planting in the past by not only performing a soil test, but picking the right forages. So I guess that's a statement more than anything. That's not a question.
Yeah, well, I guess it's the old saying, quantity versus quality, and just being real targeted on what you're trying to do and plant it in the right place and look after it the right way, it'll yield really well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd just like to add, especially with Andy being here, that what he was just mentioning a minute ago about not everything that they grow ends up being a home run as far as the palatability standpoint. Because Dudley, you'll probably remember this, but we had some radish 8 or 10 years ago that
And it was beautiful.
was just the most gorgeous plant in the world. And I'm not going to mention the name of what type of radish it was, but it was a type of radish, and it was the prettiest thing. Mic check, we're still here. Okay. It was the prettiest radish you've ever seen growing, but I got absolutely zero deer utilization out of it. And that's on a farm they were used to eating a lot of brassicas, and I probably had 10 other test plots going that year in adjacent areas, and that was the one you never could find a leaf grazed on. But they kind of already knew it was going to be that way. They felt it was going to be a low performer on the palatability standpoint, but the looks were really flashy. It was beautiful. And Dudley, you grew some and sent pictures.
Yeah, we grew some behind the office, and I ate it myself because the deer didn't eat it.
Yeah.
We need to put a utilization counts around there to see how much you ate.
Yes. But yeah, I guess that's real key is looks can be deceiving. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to graze well.
And these are high-powered annual forages.
Yes.
So talk about how important proper lime and fertilization is.
So look, it's the same quality as a grain, as like a cereal grain. And so you are growing a really high quality crop. And so you have to treat it like a high quality crop. And that means, phosphate and nitrogen are the two key elements which the plant needs. So it needs phosphate at sowing, and it needs nitrogen when the leaf canopy starts to close over. So having adequate phosphate and nitrogen is real key to a successful food plot.
Well, I tell you what, now more than ever, since fertilizer's gone up, we hear about people saying, "Well, I'm going to cut my fertilizer back," but now that's the one thing you don't want to do. And so
I learned that the hard way last season.
Yeah, and so we've got some of these. We obviously recommend you do a soil test and follow that, and then we've got some foliar applied spray fertilizers that don't take the place of that granular, but they supplement it during the growing season, and we see the plants just respond to that stuff. It's incredible. Austin sprays all the time.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty amazing what you can do with the foliar applied fertilizers, and that's why I'm such a big proponent too of telling guys if you're willing to take the time to do it, and you're going to fertilize per the soil test, like Andrew was talking about, make sure you've got plenty of phosphorus and potassium out there when you're planting to get started. But if you want to wait until that 30-day mark or so and do a follow-up application of just straight nitrogen, you can hear those plants growing. I mean, when everything else, because that's when it's just looking for that extra fuel kick.
30 days in?
Somewhere around there. That seems to be a pretty good mark. It doesn't have to be that, but that gives the plant some time to get up and have some growth to it and have some actual leaf tissue space for that fertilizer to land on. But it just kicks those brassicas into, it's a steroid shot. So if you can take the time to do it, the follow-up application of nitrogen, no different than the guys that are going to be side dressing their corn with nitrogen, you're giving it a shot of fuel at a time in its life that it really needs it. So what they do over there works here too from fertilization standpoint.
So are you cutting back on the nitrogen on planting day and then adding nitrogen later?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that could possibly help you with weed competition as well.
It could, and particularly in the South, because like the very first time the earliest planting dates, we can still get a pretty good weed flush
Oh, for sure. I
in
mean,
the
it's
South. So
over
Oh,
90
yeah.
degrees when we're
yeah,
planting.
it's something you have to deal with. Whereas you can wait 30 days later sometimes and disc that same area and get almost zero weed response just from the photo period, I think, is what my limited mind goes to, is just what time of year it actually is. So that is not giving those weeds too much extra fuel if it was some type of an early planting.
So, Andy, can you describe a little bit of the difference between, which we still love, a standard, we call them deer radish, but just your standard daikon? Can you explain what the differences are between this, what we call it enduro, you guys called it endurance, but what are the differences between your standard daikon and this enduro radish?
Look, it's as simple as the daikon radish has been bred for human consumption. So the root is used in Asian cooking, and the leaf is basically chopped off and left in the paddock. So only the root is actually harvested. Whereas air grazing radishes, we breed both the root and the leaf to be grazable by animals. And the Asian daikon radish leaf is not very palatable to the grazing animal.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's just different uses.
And they like it here. So the enduro, what I noticed was that there was more of a top, it grew more of a top
Yes.
compared to daikon.
It has been selected for top.
Way
growth.
more forage, way more tonnage.
Yeah.
And another thing I noticed this past winter when it got so cold was that the enduro radish seemed to handle the extreme cold better. The daikon, it seems like when you hold it in hand or maybe thump it, how some people will thump a melon to check it for ripeness. It doesn't seem as dense as the enduro radish root. And I'm thinking that's probably why it didn't freeze and break down as quickly as the standard daikon.
Yeah, and that's as simple as the daikon radish comes from Asia. Just doesn't get the cold climatic type conditions that
Gotcha.
you see.
So the parent crops wouldn't have had to been cold tolerant.
No, they would have been quite warm season type.
Well, with the winter we had, we really noticed it here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Enduro took it. Endura.
And again, I like them both, but that enduro has a lot more foliage on the top, and those bulbs last a lot longer in the ground.
One thing we've seen through the years is that white-tailed deer love the deer radishes. And I can't think of a single region of the country where guys haven't had success with it.
No, and I always tell folks on the phone it's the equivalent of soybeans in the summer. You can't get them out of it. Once they figure it out, how much they like it.
It is. And what was it? It was a couple of years ago. Me and Bobby were talking about it. In 1 year, just guys we knew, there was like 4 different 200-inch deer that had been killed over radishes, just because of the time of year that they seem to be so palatable. Is that little small window when bucks make that first mistake, in that summer feeding pattern, and guys like the Drurys and the Lindsays and the guys have got something really figured out. They whack them over those radishes so early in the year, and it's crazy. That's a great comparison. Soybeans, the soybeans of the fall.
But the more I grew them, the more I realized that I want, speaking of the deer radish, the daikon, I wanted other things in there. I wanted maybe some rape or some turnip, because you have a few nights of really cold weather, below 20 degrees in a row, and those daikons start fizzling out, and then they start hitting the rape and the turnip. So that's why I was wanting to mix stuff in, just like our final forage product has a mixture of brassicas. But this enduro seems to cover all the bases. It really does, to me.
And as long as it takes, and we're talking about how long it takes to breed these plants and get them to a stage of where everything kind of comes together. It's been pretty neat that all the years that we've been using some of the original varieties, they're still good.
Still good.
They're still amazing.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's that one rape that just keeps churning out the goods. Bioroa. Yeah.
So we back in the day when we started all this, there were dozens of varieties that they brought over for us to use, and we kind of whittled it down to less than a dozen that made some were attractive, palatable early, some mid season, some late season, and that went into what we use. And slowly we kind of rotated so if we had a dozen we were using, if whatever was the weakest one, we replaced it about every other year. So we've just got a great stable of plants that perform. And look, we're talking brassicas, but we are so proud of these red and white clovers that we get from you guys, along with the chicory, and we have that in Clover Plus, which has been a blend since day one.
Yeah, I told somebody that yesterday. The customer called.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about clover. They were kind of debating on using just a straight clover, like non-typical, where it's one variety, or the blend. And I said, well, I can tell you this: we've had it since day one. And I said, it's just so good.
One of our most popular products.
It's
no doubt.
unbelievable.
So,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
I just tend on the clover thing. Now that we're on that subject, I tend to like to put Clover Plus, which is the blend with chicory, in, I would say, lesser soils, and I use the non-tip in my better soils.
I think that's
Just because it's like a designer clover that gets real big leaves. But I like that Clover Plus on log index and more upland soils because it is a blend, and some of those annuals kick in when things dry down, and then you've got that chicory component too.
Yeah, I always kind of refer to the Clover Plus as high ground. I mean, I've grown it unbelievably high ground and low ground.
Oh, for
but
sure.
If I had to just say one over the other, I tend to put the Clover Plus on the more well-drained soils and ridge tops, and the non-typical maybe in better soil situations. They both coexist great together. And matter of fact,
Clover Plus has
we have some of
non-typical in it.
So
Clover Plus has non-typical in it.
just a tiny bit.
Golly, learning something new every day.
Yeah.
Hey, but on these blends, and you've told me this a lot, can you talk a little bit about like Maximum? I mean, we're talking about Endurance Radish a lot, but Maximum is a blend of several brassicas. Can you talk about the reason that is the way it is?
So we've got 4 rapes and 1 turnip in there. So we're using Spitfire rape, R24, Bioroa, the gold standard, I like to say,
Mm-hmm.
and then our green globe turnip. And so the way that these guys taught us to blend those years ago is you've got to really pay attention to the area that you're planting and what do you want. Do you want a ton of tops or do you want a ton of bulbs? Because the bulb producing varieties like the green globe turnip, 2 pounds, 3 pounds to the acre. So if you think about what's in there, it's a lot of seed if you want to grow a lot of bulb. And then Andrew and them would always, talked about the palatability on how they had figured out, I guess through all y'all's trials of watching when the deer selected that plant the most, kind of gave you a window of what its best palatability.
Yeah, it's either an early graze or a mid graze or a late graze, and that's a purely a genetic effect of the plant and what time it becomes palatable to the grazing deer. So just knowing how each variety performs is really important, and what you want out of the mix. Do you want an early feed, a mid feed, a late feed, or a combination of the 3?
And that's what we're offering is a year-round or a season-long solution because of the timing of the brassicas.
Yeah, so, gosh, thinking about Mark Jury back in the day when we got all this started, and he helped us kind of figure out some ways. But, boy, there was a period of time when Mark was just crazy about Maximum. And then as we've offered up some radishes and winter bulbs and final forage, we kind of It seems like we got a little more interested in some of these others, but maximum is hard to beat.
It is, and it's so cool because people like Mark that are really in tune with a lot of different food plots have gotten to where maximum is like use it in this little spot, radish in this spot. I just like how they've fine-tuned it even to that point.
Yeah, a lot of folks
like
do
a
that.
quick-
I mean, I've even got folks that'll buy the Maximum and buy our winter bulb product and mix them together. And it seems like people further north tend to lean more towards the winter bulb, and further south is Maximum. And everybody loves the radishes.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to see how this Enduro comes into the game in the future.
So Andy, you're like 10 or 12 days into a trip from New Zealand, and I see you over there fighting a yawn. And
I'm fighting the yawn too.
that couch is pretty
Join the
comfortable.
crowd.
Are you sleeping good at night?
I am. I call it the 3 o'clock blues.
Yeah, I know what that
The
means.
3 p.m. blues.
Well, it didn't help what we fed him for lunch.
Yeah,
Yes.
it happens.
Yeah.
It really does. I thought Richie was going to catch me the other day. I looked up and he was staring at
Oh, look.
me.
I vote we have a siesta at the bowl hole here.
These couches are pretty comfy.
They are.
We might.
If we get a little more done in the morning, we could consider that,
Yeah. Let's go back to the Clover Plus, the red and whites and the chicory. Chicory is such an expensive part of that blend, but yet we don't want to take it out because it serves such a function, especially late summer. Why is chicory so expensive?
So chicory is a success species in whatever situation we use it. So whether it's for sheep, beef cattle, dairy, or deer, chicory is a standout performer. So we produce a lot of chicory for a lot of different animal types, and that has its challenges for us. So the breeding of chicory is really difficult. It's hard to get seed off single plants, so it's a long process. But the commercial seed production is also really difficult. So we do the breeding in New Zealand, but a lot of our chicory is grown in Italy, in Europe, and that's because the climate is so hot and dry, and it matures the chicory evenly from top to bottom of the plant. So a seed chicory plant is about 6 foot tall, and on that 6 foot tall plant, there's lots of different pods at different stages. So when you've got an immature pod at the bottom of the plant, it has a really bad germination. So you need that plant to dry off evenly from top to bottom in order to get seed with good germination across the whole line. Because you can't just harvest the top stuff. You've got to harvest the whole plant. And so that's where the Italian summer actually does the job. And so we have to produce in Italy and pay euros for that seed.
That's
So
fascinating.
it seems like it's indeterminate instead of determinate.
It's indeterminate. It flowers. Like its flowering period is probably about a month long. And that means that at harvest, there's different maturity of pods.
Okay. I've got a few in my yard from spilling some Clover Plus a few years ago, and they keep coming back, and
It's amazing.
I'll fertilize them and all that. And you're right. They get over 6 feet tall, and they have these beautiful purple
Blue,
flower, blue,
lavender
purple
colored.
flowers.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing flowers.
Which is funny because one of the first years I had a really, really solid field of Clover Plus, make it into its second and third year. The chicory really took over in that really rocky ground at the place that you visited with us years ago. And the chicory just loves that really rocky, well-drained soil. And I noticed it bolting, I think it's called. Chicory
Flowering,
is
yes.
bolting. And when it starts putting out all the flowers, may have been the most attractive time of the year to the deer. They loved what looks like a weed at that point. 'Cause it's just kind of ugly and it's flowering and pretty, but it's kind of a weedy looking thing when it gets to that point. But that may have been the time of year where the deer were selecting it over everything else in the field.
Look, those flowers are really sweet. And so the deer really, they graze flowering chicory really well.
and this is all theory to me, but it seems like when chicory is at its strongest, nothing else is. But it also seems to be that time of the year when it's just really hot and dry, and deer like to go to your salt licks and such. But I can't help but think, since it has such a deep taproot, that it's holding, it's kind of like Marcus Lashley calls it, a mineral stump. I feel like those chicory leaves have all kinds of things that are good for the deer in them at that time of the year. Like, they might not eat it as much for the taste, but just because it is so good for them.
Yeah. And I think, Andy, you told me years ago that y'all use chicory to worm
Yeah.
sheep and deer.
Yeah, look, we don't quite know what the process is, but we do know that when grazing animals, more so lambs, are grazing pure swards of chicory, their worm burden is very low, almost zero. So there is a parasite control aspect to chicory also.
Interesting.
It really is. So let's talk about red and white clovers and explain a little bit of the difference in those.
Well, it's mainly during to the growth the growth habit. So a red clover has a deep taproot, and in the first year it will just grow from that taproot. But at the end of that first year, it starts to send out what we call daughter plants. So that's runners that start to establish daughter plants. And that's when you see the red clover actually starting to expand and go beyond the original plant. Whereas white clover doesn't have a central taproot. It grows through what we call stolons, and that spreads right from day one. And so your white clover, every stolon has the ability to produce another plant. And that can happen from day one. And so that's why the clover spreads out and fills in gaps. The white clover fills in gaps, whereas the red clover takes a bit more time.
Very different in habit.
Yeah, it really is. That white clover is the more I learn about white clover, and we've talked about stolons before, it really seems like it's got a strong place in a gamekeeper whitetail manager's toolbox for sure.
Yeah, and red is good as well. I think it has slightly better soil benefits because it has that deeper root. So a lot of people are thinking about that these days when they're planting food plots. It's they're feeding their deer and their animals and their pollinators, but by doing so, you're adding diversity to your soil and mining nutrients from down deep and fixing nitrogen and all that other good stuff.
So I've got a question. This is kind of off the wall, but some of these plants that we talk about are considered to be rapes. How did they get that name? Was there somebody that was named? I mean, it's just not a name that you would think as a marketing person you would choose.
The scientific
I don't
name
think a
is
marketer named it.
How did it get that name?
I have no idea how it got that name. It's so the seed version, the grain version of Brassica napus is called canola, and the forage version is called forage rape. And I have no idea where that name came from. It just seems to have always called that, probably for the last 100 years.
Canola.
I just figured it came from the scientific name.
Brassica rapa.
Yeah.
Rapa. There you go.
I'm not sure what rapa means. If anybody knows Latin.
It's subspecies. So Brassica is the species name, rapa
Okay.
is the subspecies.
Very interesting.
Well,
Now you know.
yeah.
Well, it is really. Dudley and I talk about this all the time. There's the canola and the mustard seed is everywhere. It's used in so many different places. But I don't know why I said that.
And not attractive by deer.
No.
They just don't like it. Kind of like the wild mustard. A lot of people end up having a lot of problems with in certain parts of the country.
Yeah.
It's a really tough weed to deal with, and the deer cared nothing about it.
but I used to never have problems with deer getting into the garden, in your winter greens garden. But then when everybody started planting brassicas, I did notice they would eventually get into my rape and my turnips. But you're right, they would leave the mustards alone.
Mm-hmm.
So the people in New Zealand, do y'all fix a pot of greens like we do here? Do y'all eat them?
Some people do. It's more so probably turnips for the bulb crops. So turnip and swede is quite commonly eaten in the wintertime.
I think we call those rutabagas, maybe.
Rutabagas. So we
yeah.
so we use them in soup.
So do you ever pick some greens, wash them, and boil them, and put some bacon in there?
Look, we do that sometimes with kales. So we have like some grazing kales, and they go not too bad in the pot. So.
Well,
Yeah.
we've had Austin on it for like 20 years. And
Kale,
he
yeah.
weighed like 90 pounds when he started here. Was like 5'2". Now he's 6'4", like 220. So it definitely
They
works.
are good. It doesn't hurt to have a little ranch.
Yeah.
And bacon solves a lot of problems.
Oh, well, I don't
Put
know whether
bacon in.
our turnip greens are good or our use of pork is good around here.
Yeah,
But
and
let
then
me tell you
there's
what,
pepper sauce.
you got to have that pepper sauce.
Yeah.
A little
I'm
ham hock. Come
I'll
on
eat
with
the
it.
stuff raw. I can't cook. Once you cook them, I'm out.
Oh, man, I'm in. I mean them raw, cooked, however. They're good. They really
Yeah.
are.
That's good.
Fermented.
Richard, will you grab that guy right there and bring him in here, please?
Are you really going to bring Norman up in the podcast studio?
Never know what we might do.
He's been trying to call me, so he's probably just going to chew on me when he walks in here.
So,
Hey, let me do the lurch. You rang.
Andy, can you tell us what are you working on what's the future you have?
Oh, look, we're working on nutrient efficiency is a big part of our work. So looking at nitrogen and phosphate efficiency, so being able to grow more with less. So we call that our frugal crop breeding program. So
I like this.
and the other big thing we're working on is drought tolerance, so water use efficiency. So it's like fuel efficiency in your car.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to get more from less, and we're also trying to do a bit of work with climate change. So trying to work with, well, what happens if our climate increases by 1.5 to 2 degrees? How does that affect the growing pattern of these crops?
Interesting.
So that's our big drive for the next decade, really.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the major projects that we spend, quite a lot of money on.
Well, those are very hungry crops.
Yes.
It's much like growing corn. It requires a lot of input. So, maybe we've almost finished breeding them to be perfect for deer and other animals. But now if we can make it more efficient to grow, especially with the prices going where they are, that would be really nice. And, we don't really irrigate our food plots, but knowing if we have a dry late summer and we can plant something that's still going to persist. These things already do really well once they get going, but a little more efficient with water use would be great.
Are you guys as interested down there about improving soil health?
Yeah, so that's become more of a drive. And so we're actually starting to use some of these crops as what we call cover crops. And that's when we're planting the crop after wheat or, corn, and then actually mulching it back into the soil in order to return organic matter and nutrients. So, yeah, soil health is becoming more and more of a focus for the grower, and we're hoping to provide some cropping options that can assist with that.
That's good news.
We hear
I know Dudley loves to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cover cropping is the new cool thing.
No doubt about it.
There's since I've if you Instagram, it'll start feeding you different things that you check out, as you know, Laney.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sure.
I've seen your Instagram feed before. I know what you're looking at, Bobby.
No, I'm getting a lot of how to improve my soil, and so there's a lot of different sites out there that are, they're selling a product and they're selling like you go to a class and learn about this. But bacteria in the soil is
Well, the idea of like as you're working the ground, you can make it better. That's pretty phenomenal. And if we can ever get there, then we really have obviously something sustainable. So
Yeah. I mean, I think, before we started agriculture a long time ago, we were doing it naturally, just with all the different diversity of plants.
And the way you had to farm.
Yeah. So, Andy, I want to ask you, I'm going to catch you off guard with this one, but I want your opinion on this. A lot of all of our clovers, we pre-inoculate and we coat.
Yes.
And there is, I'm not sure what occurs down under in New Zealand, but
Down under.
New Zealand's not down under. Is it?
Oh, man.
I knew there was no way we could get through this without an Australia reference.
But so I'm being serious here. So it's pretty common to coat clovers in North America, and we see a lot of value in it. Have you guys studied that? And can you explain your thoughts on that?
Yes, so we do the same in New Zealand. We coat and put rhizobia on all their clovers. We see a real increase in field performance with more modern rhizobia strains rather than trying to rely on the existing soil strains. And so we like to use inoculated, coated clover in all their mixes. One, you just guarantee a better establishment, and two, you're making sure you've got the best strain of rhizobia available for nitrogen fixation.
So let's go a little deeper on this. When you look at the label on a seed bag and the coating takes up a certain percentage of that bag, meaning that you are getting fewer seeds in that bag, the performance outweighs the, inertness. Does that make sense?
Correct.
The extra raw seed.
Yeah, so when you compare bare seed with coated seed and do a plant number over time type trial, quite often the coated seed actually produces more plants, in a given area than the bare seed, because it's had a better chance to survive and to establish than the bare seed.
Yeah.
There you go, naysayers.
More seedling survival is typically what we see.
Yeah.
And not just seedling survival, but seedling vigor after they get up and going. So it's not just you're getting less seeds, you're getting seeds that have a lot higher percentage chance of making it into a full-grown mature plant.
Yeah, and the numbers just speak for itself. Like, I've always seen a difference between the two, and spent a lot of time on my hands and knees counting plants per meter square.
Yeah, I mean that's what you do, and so another benefit, Dudley, is some of these coated plants we're starting to use some brighter colors, and you can actually kind of walk across the field now and see if you've done a good job spreading that seed.
Yeah.
Where before, if it's a natural raw seed, you're not going to see that seed on them.
Yeah, it's really, really difficult to see raw clover seed. Just about of any of the varieties. It's not just the size; the color just blends in with everything soil related. So it's that coating, if nothing else, helps you see how you're tracking on your seed distribution.
Lanny, did you have a question?
Well, yeah. I was going to ask, what's next? I know I've heard a little chirping about what's coming up down the pipe. I know we've been waiting for this particular radish since 1947. So I just, I heard some little rumblings about something else y'all are working on. So I'd love you to talk about that.
Oh, look, as I say, we're really trying to introduce what we call environmental traits, trying to make, the growing of these crops more sustainable in the future. And that is sustainability with regards to water use, to nutrient use, to disease resistance, and to all your what I call your base agronomic traits, which is your yield, your persistence, your quality. So it's all about trying to introduce environmental traits, but maintaining these agronomic traits and not just concentrating on the agronomics and forgetting about the environmental traits.
That sounds like a canned statement. I love it, but you're going to bring us something new, aren't you?
Yeah, well, have we ever let you down?
No, you have not. I can't wait to see what's next.
25 years. How many plants have you created?
Oh, look, I work with a team. There's 8 of us in the team, and we all do different aspects of the breeding. But I've probably had a direct hand in about 10 different new, completely new varieties.
That's so cool.
Which is, we probably average every, one variety between every 1 to 2 years.
It's a long-term game over there at PPG, and so is this deer management stuff. So
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense.
I think we should get a variety called Dumbleton. Isn't that how you spell your
Yeah.
name?
Are you reading? What are you?
I think we should.
Dumbleton.
I think we should come up with a variety named Dumbleton.
I'm in.
It's not quite catchy, though. You need something that's quick fire.
Andy Radish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You like Enduro or, Biroa, something quick off the tongue.
Back in the day, those like
Back in the day.
Biorora and Oamaru
Yes.
and all those, we just sat down and looked at a map of New Zealand and picked out names of cities.
Simple
Oh.
as that.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's how we.
Kind of like how we got the cotton mill pant.
we hadn't changed
Or
at
the
all.
Tibby britches.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
I get so tickled when I see those.
We hadn't changed at all. So, is there anything from your perspective that you need to make sure you say here? If there's somebody from PGG Wrightson listening, like John McKenzie, do you need to say hello to him or help me get back home, John, or don't leave me over here?
Well, he did mention that I had to do my job over here, and if I didn't finish it, I couldn't come home. So I think my tickets are valid for tomorrow. So
All right.
he,
That's great.
he
Good to
hasn't
hear.
cancelled them, which is nice.
That's a good thing. That's for sure.
Well, John, from what we've seen, every free minute he's had his laptop up, he's working, he's helping us, he's answering questions from Mac, or he's eating.
Yeah.
It's one of the other. So
I've
He's
been
getting
we-
more work done than us, though.
I've been well looked after.
Yeah, we like to do that. That's for sure.
yeah. So anybody else got another question? If not, we're going to move and ask a trivia question of our guest here.
We got a rapid fire today?
Do we have rapid
I
fire?
do have a rapid fire.
Yeah.
Boom,
prepared.
boom.
So before we do that, I'd like to just call attention. We've had a guest walk into the studio.
He's been calling me. I'm glad we can talk now.
He's doesn't have a mic, so nobody can hear him. But Norman Sneed.
He's got a seat here. Sit down, Norm.
I wish he would.
He said no.
Norman
He
is
said
one of my
no. It was a
favorite
hard
licensed
no.
He
people.
looks like a hard no over there sitting on the couch.
He is from Oxford, Mississippi, though. but-
He's an
That
Ole
we
Miss
won't,
fan.
We won't hold that against him.
And he's my distant cousin.
Are y'all kin?
Well, my wife is a Sneed, and Norman is a Sneed.
Well, holy moly.
Here's
such a
something
small
even
world.
crazier.
You know, read a couple Faulkner books. You'll see that last name in there.
And me and Norman are both from the same area in the great state of,
New Mexico?
yeah.
Norman, you're
There's
not
a-
from New Mexico.
There's a New Mexico.
You did.
Well, if Norman would sit down by the mic, we could
Well,
hear him.
yeah, here he's going to tell us now. Tell us how he was born at a very early age.
Just have a seat there, Norman.
You can tell.
And that mic is what you're talking to.
I understand that, Bob.
Here go the ratings.
In the turlet.
New Mexico.
Yeah.
Alamogordo.
Really?
Yeah.
I learned something new about you all the time, Norman. Thought
What?
you were pure Mississippi.
No.
Norman is a licensing expert. He's
Yes,
been
he
with
is.
the company how long?
He's also a
21
movie,
years.
movie star.
That's true.
He has.
That's
he's a,
true.
He's a movie
Heart
star.
of
Major
Dixie.
motion.
Major motion
Yeah,
picture award.
Do you still
Which
have a
award?
SAG card?
I do, but I don't carry it with me anymore.
Oh,
How many people do you know?
I think Norman's the only one I know that had a
Could be.
SAG card.
So if the Heart of Dixie was the name of the movie.
Yes, it was. It still is. Yeah, it was the guy Kurtwood Smith. He was in it. You remember him, Bobby?
I don't.
Yeah, you do. That what was that 80 show or whatever? He was the dad.
The
on that.
70s show.
Okay, yeah, the
Oh,
70.
yeah,
I was
yeah,
close.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think his name was Reed, wasn't it?
It could have been.
Hey, let's
It
get
could
that
have
over
been.
there.
Could have been. Ali Sheedy, Kurtwood Smith. That's who it was. Kurtwood Smith, Ali Sheedy, Virginia Madsen, and
Norman Sneed.
the girl that and me, the girl that was in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, short.
Molly Ringwald.
No, you know better than that. It was Phoebe Cates.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all coming back to you.
Sorry, we're putting you through
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, I mean,
But after he finished his Hollywood stint, he came to Mossy Oak and has been here ever since.
absolutely. Very happy to be here.
Proud to have you, Norman.
Thank you.
It just makes my heart jump with joy to see
He's
Norman sitting
finally
there.
on the
headphones.
mic. Yeah. The dynamic y'all have is meant for podcasts.
I've asked him a
He
dozen
can take my
times.
seat.
Oh, no.
Yes, you
no.
could.
No, this is the perfect team. Trust me.
And he won't come in here.
Well, I'm glad you got him in here this time.
We'd had a whole new batch of sponsors if Norman was on
Yeah,
here.
no doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
How's your wife?
She's fine. Thank you for asking,
Yeah.
Bobby. Yeah,
Tell her we said hello.
I will. I'll tell her you said hey.
Yeah.
She survived turkey season?
She did.
All right.
Yeah,
good.
she did.
Sweet.
It's challenging every year, as all of us know.
If you're going back to Oxford, I need to send several $100s back to give to my daughter.
Oh, yeah.
That's a student.
I'm
there.
absolutely going back, and I'll be
Okay.
happy to take that for
All
you.
right.
Just like Bobby, when he used to go to the SHOT Show, he'd go around ask if anybody wanted to give him some money that he would place on bets for him while he was out there.
Yeah. Never works. So, Norman, I want to introduce you to Andy Dumbleton from New Zealand.
Hello, Andy.
Pleased to meet you.
Yeah.
Very nice to meet you.
And
I'm glad I was able to walk in, and I was certain that Bobby was going to make some kind of reference to Australia, which I don't really understand. You
Well,
know,
they're next to each other.
Well,
They're
yeah.
islands. I thought they'd both be down under.
It's different country.
Yeah.
totally different.
Totally different.
It's like yourselves in Canada.
Yeah, there you go. That's an excellent example. Excellent.
I mean, when Stephen comes here from New Zealand, Bobby always says something about shrimp on the bobby.
Yeah,
And we're like, what in
Exactly.
the world is this guy saying?
That's Australian, not New Zealand.
Oh, I'm never gonna forget that
Maybe you could
analogy.
maybe you could Google that and print it out, Bobby.
I probably should. Yeah.
He usually does his homework a little better than me.
Got it.
Hey, so I will say that before Mac left, he did check, and we were talking about which direction.
Yes.
Norm, do you know? I'm gonna ask you a question.
Wait a minute. You were doing the fast fire. I don't have anything to do with that.
Yeah. Well, before we do that, so do you know the direction that water spins here in the northern hemisphere when you flush the toilet?
Clockwise.
Yes, clockwise.
That is correct. The tendency of circulation in a fluid to develop in a clockwise direction in the northern hemisphere, and then what direction does it spin in the southern hemisphere?
Not clockwise.
You're asking
Yeah,
me?
would you
about-
agree with that or not?
I would say probably it spins the same way.
What about you, Andrew?
I say it's different.
Yes, it is. It's counterclockwise.
Counterclockwise.
So do they have the southern lights in the southern hemisphere?
It's to do with the gravity pull from the two poles.
Okay, so yes.
This says it can be traced to the Earth's rotation.
Like I said, if you're standing on the equator, it just goes straight.
I guess
in.
go straight down. No spin at all.
Yeah. So Norm, you're going to enjoy this. This is Rapid Fire. You're in person for the Rapid Fire.
Yes.
It's brought to you by Springfield Armory.
yeah.
Have you got a 1911?
I did.
There, what a great pistol. Lanny's got
Everybody
one.
needs a 1911. I know Austin's got
Yep.
one.
I got 3.
All right, so here's where we turn it over to Dudley. Sit back and enjoy.
All right,
I
Andy.
shall.
So
Thank you.
I'm going to ask you some questions pretty quickly. And
Shoot.
I would love for a quick answer. So are you ready?
And it's just, it gives you a
I'm
couple
ready.
options. You choose one or the other, or say both or neither. So,
Okay.
ready?
Are you ready?
Yes.
Coca-Cola or L&P?
LMP.
Japanese food or Mexican food?
Oh, Mexican.
Duck hunt or deer hunt?
Oh. do I have to pick one?
No.
Oh, both.
All right. Saltwater or freshwater fishing?
Freshwater fishing.
Oysters or mussels?
Mussels.
In the car, do you listen to music, podcasts, or quiet contemplation?
I used to listen to music, but after having lots of daughters, quite complex.
There you go.
Quietness is beautiful.
What's more fun, planting or harvesting?
Harvesting.
Favorite vacation or place?
Fiji.
Fiji.
Ooh.
Cheeseburgers and fries or pizza?
Pizza.
Hunting or fishing?
Both. Have to be both.
Ginger or Marianne?
That's a tough one.
Mrs. Howell.
Do you even know what I'm talking about?
So what context is that?
Bobby.
Well, there was a television show called Gilligan's Island
Oh, yes.
that
Yep.
was very popular around here, and there was a Marianne and then Ginger the movie star.
Yes.
And so it's just a common question you just ask.
I was just picking on you because I knew you had probably
Yeah,
never
we didn't
seen
see
that.
that. Yeah,
Okay. Shampoo or shampoo plus conditioner?
I haven't shampooed my hair for
All
for a
right.
decade.
And last but not
I'm
least,
cheap to run.
last but not least, in your best Southern American dialect, can you say, bless your heart?
Yo, bless your heart.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, you did good there,
You did really
Dudley.
good. That's awesome.
Norm, see what you've been missing. You could have been a part of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'd love to
You
rapid
should be
fire
here
some
once a
questions.
week.
Yeah, right. Okay, you can rapid fire me. Ask the same question.
No,
No,
that's
I'm just kidding.
That's all right. Well, and look,
I gotta have an L&P. I mean, I've been hearing about this thing
yeah.
for a couple of weeks.
I'm surprised
I'll
that
bring
you
some
didn't
for you.
There you go.
force him into using Green Acres as opposed to Gilligan's.
Oh,
Well, we'll work on that for future podcasts.
we leave that just for Bobby.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
And we got to do some things for our younger listeners that don't know what we're talking about.
Norm, one question.
They get a lot of it though.
Marianne or Ginger?
Probably Marianne.
There we go. You heard it here. So, Andy, we appreciate you coming up here.
Yeah.
And
Wait,
helping us.
but Bobby.
What?
What about you, Marianne?
Can we cut
No,
Norm's
Marianne or
mic off? Wait,
Ginger. Marianne or Ginger.
I don't know that I could pick.
I think he's a ginger.
It'd be one of those both.
A
Okay.
movie star probably would.
Right.
Yeah. So, look, turning our attention back to Andy Dumbleton, our friend from New Zealand. We have a shirt for you.
Ooh, the
And
panel shirt.
It's part of the Companions collection. It's Mossy Oak has brought back. And Norman, would you mind handing that to him, please? But it's thank you, Norman.
I've got headphones on my back end.
It's for you.
Thank you very much.
Picked out just for you. You'll enjoy. You're going to be styling in New Zealand with that shirt because when he gets back home, I picked him out a long sleeve.
Is it cold over there?
It's winter.
Golly.
It's cold.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So we want to come to New Zealand, Andrew, and we want to go turkey hunting, and we want to hunt red stags at
Yes.
some point.
I want to shoot ducks over there
Yeah.
I want to go fishing too.
and catch those salmon he's talking
Yeah.
about.
Can't you surf over there too?
Yeah,
I mean, you can do
anything
everything
there.
there.
It sounds just
I don't know
like
why
a
we're not
wonderful
already
place.
there.
Yeah. Okay. I'm in.
Yeah.
All right.
We're coming.
Let me get your Amex.
Going, Richie. You got anything to add?
He's asleep.
Wake up, Richie.
Yeah.
Okay.
I called
So-
him this week.
And my little closing, I like to come up with a
Your
little,
little
quippy.
closing.
Yeah. So let's be like a sheep herder. Get the flock out of here. Okay. Well, they sell grazing for sheep.
Oh,
now,
that's right.
So
I
that's
forgot.
where,
I
that's the
get it.
connection.
I get it.
That's
I
So
get it.
smart, so
Oh, yeah.
thoughtful.
That's the
Man, he's
connection.
working on this one.
Yeah. Okay. All right. If nobody else has got anything else to say, why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley.
Get us out of here, Norman.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast. And be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.